we have a really interesting project here, and when you work on something like this, you're on high alert at every minute because this is a document signed by George Washington. It's hard to see the signature. It will probably be harder to see it in the, it's right there. And this is another part of the document which is going to be in the same frame with this. So you see both of these from the front. This was a piece that had been folded under, and this is going to go on the back encapsulated in Mylar. But, you know, this is the big deal item here. So a couple of things. We've had to make some alterations, 2 alterations to the frame. Our client wants to stay with the original frame, and we will show you that later. And second, we really wanted this, and I think he wanted this to kind of look the way it always looked. That's why we're using his old frame, and that's why we're not going to refinish the front of the old frame. So here's what happened. We actually found the exact same mat board that he was originally had in the frame. This is the same board. It matches perfectly. So now our archivists and conservators, don't get mad. This is a conservation board made by Bainbridge. It passes every archival test. It is absolutely safe. But when doing something like this, we always feel more comfortable with cotton rag board. So Seth Irwin, our wonderful conservator, put these mulberry paper hinge tabs on this with rice starch paste. This is a piece of Bainbridge, Crescent 100% solid core rag board. Of course, that will come off. What's going to happen is the piece is going to be put on this board. These get wrapped around, a little of the board may show, and then with linen tape. So this is now, imagine we now have this attached to this board. Okay, so we showed you how the document gets attached to the board. That will happen with both of these. Now I'm going to move the document because I don't want to be throwing this thing around while I'm showing you the next step. So let's imagine the document is now attached to this board. This board is going to go on here with through hinges. And we'll show you some of that later. So in a sense, the document is mounted on the 100% cotton rag board. That whole thing is then mounted on the conservation board. And one final note, I will put a piece of Mylar on this, which is completely inert, just to stop any interaction between this and the museum board. Interesting project, and we're going to have more to show you later. So this is the frame the George Washington signed document was in, and it's not an antique from that period by any means. I think it may have some sentimental value to its owner because they may have seen the document in this frame for years. We'll find that out later. In any event, he wants to reuse this frame. And the problem is the rabbet. This is not deep enough. When I put the documents in here, I don't want the glass pressing up against them. It can't touch them. So I have to make this deeper. And that's what these are for. And I think we've shown you this once before, but this edge has been slightly beveled. And these will be cut at a 45-degree angle. And they'll go right like this. And this will be painted to match that. And then this whole thing is now deep enough, and I can fit everything in the frame. All right, we will show you more later. All right, these are the mulberry paper hinges that Seth put on. This is the cotton rag board with Mylar on it. And I've just mounted the one without the signature. So that's how it gets mounted. Now, I've changed my mind on something. Originally, I was going to do a through hinge on this. Remember, I have a through hinge on this, it would go through that backboard. I'm changing my mind. I'm thinking there's so much handling involved in putting that through hinge through the backboard, turning it upside down, taping it from behind. So I think what I'm going to do instead is, once I feel we've got this really figured out, I think I am going to spot glue these down onto the backboard with some rice starch paste. So we'll let you know how it all goes. So you just saw me finishing up the document that did not have the signature on it. I wanted to do that one first to get a feel for what I'm working with. Now we're going to do the George Washington. So what I'm going to do is put it face down. This is the back. And this is the rag board with the Mylar on it. These get pulled around, and as you saw me doing on the other one, a little linen tape across here. Okay, I might sound a little muffled. I actually have my mask on while I'm working on this. Sometimes when you talk, you might spit a little bit. Anything like that, I just don't want to breathe on this thing. So these have been mounted down to an acid-free foam core with Mylar on them. The hinge wraps around that piece of museum board. Then the museum board has been attached to this with a through hinge. And so now we have a nice solid thing. The important thing in setting this up was to make sure that these were parallel and their relationship, this is the same, that's the same, that the relationship to each other was correct. Now we're going to talk about sizing this down for the frame. And I'm going to show you the frame in a minute. So this is the frame. And I've got a 2-inch border there. I've got a 2 1/4, so I go 2 1/8 to here. Now the problem is these things are not square, so what you have to do is just sort of do the best you can. And let's check the top and bottom. 1.5 inch, 1 7/8. It can come up a little bit. So I'm not going to have you watch all of this, but once I get this figured out, I'm going to come in with a pencil and mark the corners, and then this board gets trimmed down to fit the frame. Okay, it's all done. And this document is from 1783. And it is George Washington signing this document, discharging someone honorably from the military. This was an awesome project. Thanks for watching the video.